Morning, everyone. This is the April 19th meeting of the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force and the Law and Justice Council. I'm Stephen Gockley, co-chair with Jack Hovenier, and I'm going to call the meeting to order and begin with our land acknowledgement statement. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. Has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda? Great. Okay, then we'll head into the substantive areas. The first area has to do with the recent state Supreme Court decision in State versus Blake. And Eric, I think you're up for the presentation on this.
Sure. Okay, so this has been going on for some time, and I'm not exactly sure where we've left off. I've talked about this a number of times with people. It's a decision that's I guess I'll just start from the beginning and kind of talk about that kind of cursory and then move to what's going on more lately, because I think folks might find that somewhat interesting. So basically the Supreme Court said that the simple possession statute is unconstitutional. They found that the lack of a level of intent, any sort of information about intent was absent, and because that was not in the statute, the charge is unconstitutional, and that takes us back a long ways. Takes us back for convictions. All convictions from the very beginning of the statute, which was 1971, are now just void. It's unconstitutional. That means that the cases that have not been completed should be dismissed, and all that have been made convictions should be vacated. And there's a lot of complications surrounding all of that. The complications that we're talking about right now are significant costs. The costs involved with going back to re-sentence people, because you see, some people have been convicted for other charges, and they have in their criminal history scoring points of possession of controlled substance. So the idea is that we have to go back and re-sentence people who are currently in prison on the other charges. We've already dismissed all the cases that are holding people in custody right now for simple possession, but there are people that have been scored up by having prior convictions for simple possession. So anyway, we're looking at the costs involved with that, and it's looking pretty extraordinary. The amount that we've calculated through a couple different sources, WAPA one, another legislative group, another, they both come out to the same amount. It's a $100 million problem for the state of Washington. So in fixing that, which is just extraordinary. It's going to impact the courts. It's going to impact the prosecution. It's going to impact our budgets locally, the county, and maybe the state's been talking about coming around and helping some, but it's going to impact the county if that all comes to fruition. All right, so that's what we've been talking about for a while now. And now let's talk a little bit about what's going on since. This has been kind of a crazy situation for us in law enforcement. We've never seen anything like this. This is the biggest change that's happened in my 27 years in prosecution. As I mentioned, the financial impact's huge. Just the idea of what we do on the street and how to investigate crime. I mean, that's a huge event as well. And so the Supreme Court judges, they made this decision, and now they're thinking about it. They're thinking about, gee, maybe we should have put some more thought into it, because they're actually reconsidering this. A prosecutor's office in Spokane, they filed a motion to reconsider, and you know, that happens a lot. Motions to reconsider happen a lot. But here in this case, the Supreme Court has actually asked for briefing from the defense. In other words, they're thinking about it. And this is something that's you know, almost unheard of. This happens very, very rarely. And, you know, I don't know if it's a political reason why they're thinking about it some more. I don't know if they're, you know, it's like, if suddenly they're thinking about all the ramifications that have happened from this, or what. But there is a motion to reconsider that's on the table that's actually being reconsidered here in this matter. So that's happening. Now, we also thought when this thing went down that we had concerns about the way the possession of controlled substance left people out in cold, not safe, and we were really concerned about. I mean, for me specifically, I was concerned about children. I was concerned about children having access to hard drugs and not having any sort of repercussions for it. No way to intervene and help out, and I was really concerned about that. And I didn't think, nobody thought that the legislature would do anything. Nobody thought that there was time to do anything, because, you know, bills had already been, you know, they've already started their process. There had been a couple bills in place, or at least one bill in place, where they were looking at the way Oregon had done their big initiative, the way they had changed it. And since that was in place, they were able to tune that up to help out our situation, to put in place a law that might fit and help protect children, that also might provide some treatment possibilities. And as I understand it, that law is moving forward. People are behind it, and there is some political will to make something happen. So right now we have competing situations going on. The Supreme Court is thinking about it. You know, gee, what did we do? And the legislature is actually coming to some answers about how they can do something to you know, make this, to fix the problem. And it's really interesting. It's really interesting to see what's going to happen here, and we're all just kind of waiting right now with bated breath. We were really being responsive here in my office early on. We like I told you folks a number of times, we dismissed about 200 cases very quickly. We wanted to make sure that we were treating people fairly. This whole idea of vacating and resentencing people, we were planning on moving forward with that, thinking, okay, let's just get right on it. But then when the Supreme Court really started reconsidering what they had done, we stopped and slowed down, and we're waiting. We're kind of in a waiting game to see what happens next. And right now, you know, I don't know. But something's going to happen. Something has to happen, and I know I just I mean, it's interesting, and hopefully something good will come from this. That's about all I have, unless people have some questions.
Thanks, Eric. Jill, do you know where the 2-page list of bills in the legislature came from? Who provided that?
That came from, I believe, Raylene.
Okay, thank you, Raylene. So you have in the materials 2 pages, maybe 8 bills that are in the legislature. Eric or Raylene, do either of you know the status of those bills at the moment, or does anyone on the call? Seth?
Oh, I'm sorry, I've got another question unrelated to yours.
Okay. Anybody know the status of any of the bills?
You know, Stephen, I don't see the list. I do know the status of some bills.
Okay. Anne has her hand up, and Raylene.
Oh, I know there's a number of bills out there, but I know the one that Senator Dingra had started trying to address some of this and wanting to put together a recovery navigator program. I think that's back in House Rules Committee for the second reading. And I think, you know, they're up against a timeline. They are hoping to end session by Saturday. So I think we don't know what the final outcome will be.
Right. Raylene, did you have any information?
Unfortunately, I've been slammed this last weekend, but I did send the updated list on Wednesday, and that came from AOC. So as it is from what I sent out, it should be up to date at least through Wednesday of last week, and I'll see if I can get more information for you.
So
Sorry,
I'll answer your question, Stephen. I'm not really, like I said, I don't see the list, but I'll tell you one thing that you folks might find of interest, and this is something that's something that I'd worked on. It's the independent investigation bill, and that's looking like it's passing. It's passed both houses, and it's going to be in front of the governor here soon. It's expected to be signed. It's the governor's proposal, so it will be signed.
Thanks, Eric. Mayor Seth, your question.
Yeah, question for Eric. Eric, you said that this is coming with enormous increased costs to the whole system. Can you unpackage that a little bit? What's it attributable to primarily? Yeah,
so it's the main part of it, I would think, is the court time, the time that it takes to prepare, new judgment and sentences and bring people together to re-sentence people. But there's also additional amounts that'll be repaying people for the money that they paid to LFOs. So it's actually it's money that they've given to the county and state that needs to be returned to them because this law is unconstitutional. So it's coming from a number of places, but those are the two big ones.
Thank you.
I'll just add in terms of the court burden, everybody should recall that this will be hitting the courts much in Superior Court at the same time that the eviction moratorium will be lifted, and the court will be dealing with a huge backlog of cases in that area as well.
So I'm going to add to that, and this is mainly a Superior Court problem because these are felony charges, but there are jurisdictions that have handled the possession of controlled substance as a misdemeanor. We've reduced the number of cases into our district court that can, and will be affected the same way once we start, having to take care of them by vacating, resentencing, or whatever. And also there's other jurisdictions, like, for instance, I know Blaine has had a possession of controlled substances as a misdemeanor program for quite some time. So that's going to impact them for all the LFOs and things like that.
Eric, do you have anything that you're aware of in other jurisdictions? I know there was some concern about disincentivizing drug court and so forth, and maybe we haven't felt quite the impact we feared here. I'm wondering what other areas are experiencing.
Sure. So that's a great question, and it's another question that I don't think there's a great answer for, but it's something that a lot of people are thinking about, and that is, can we enact our own local law? And I know that it's been talked about here locally some, but not as much as in other areas. There are a couple counties that have decided that they're going to pass their own misdemeanor possession of a controlled substance charge, and they've been working on that. I'm not sure if they've actually gotten it done yet, but I know that they've been working on it. It's kind of a complicated thing. I'm not sure if that's going to work. There is a general preemption statute that prevents local jurisdictions from doing anything that gives more penalty than what the state has done. And right now there is no penalty for possession of a controlled substance. So I think they're kind of getting out on a limb here, trying to do something to protect their community that might not be the right way of going. WAPA had originally reviewed this and recommended that people not do it. And then like I mentioned, I know a couple of counties that are just doing it. And one of the counties is a county that is under the president of WAPA. So anyway, I'm not really sure how this is looking and whether it makes sense and whether it's a good practice. I'll tell you, at our county level, I don't see the political will to get that done. It's I don't know. I think the more prudent position to take is to see what the Supreme Court does, and there's some middle ground. It might not be just, okay, we're going to make this whole thing constitutional again. they might be able to change it so that it's not as retroactive as it currently is. There's a lot of things that they could do. Anyway, and then also Senator Gingrich, her bill is, you know, it's making some headway. I've been hearing a lot about it, and I guess we'll have to wait. I think it's a good idea to wait and see.
One more question. Do you have anything you could tell us at this point about the time frame we're looking at in the Supreme Court's reconsideration, when the briefs are due, when a hearing might be set for oral argument if they have one?
Well, I haven't seen any deadlines. We were hopeful that it'd be done within about 30 days, and that's coming up it's coming up close to that right now. So I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything lately.
Other questions for Eric, or comments, discussion on the Blake decision and the repercussions? Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Eric, for going over this again with us.
Sure.
Excuse me, Stephen, I'm going to jump in for just a second here. It looks like we have a task force member who has joined the meeting by phone. If you could unmute your phone by pressing *6 just to let us know who you are, that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Hi, Jill and Task Force. This is Mike Parker. I'm actually proxy for Greg Winter today, and I am the person on the phone. Good morning, all.
Thank you, Mike.
Welcome, Mike. Okay, the next item on the agenda is state legislative proposals that have a bearing on the task force's scope of work. And we have a substantial portion of the packet devoted to that. Dan, I think you're on for presenting.
Okay, thank you and good morning, everyone. I'll do my best here. So if I can direct your attention to packet pages 3 through 11. This is the City of Bellingham's legislative priorities. This is an exhaustive list of priorities. The ones that are highlighted within the packet are the ones that are germane and relevant to the task force's work. If I can direct your attention to, I'm going to highlight a couple of these and then we can have some discussion. If I can direct your attention to packet page 4, there are 2 items here: House Bill 1082 concerning state oversight and accountability of peace officers and corrections officers, and then just scrolling down, House Bill 1089 concerning compliance audits. House Bill 1092. Sorry about that. Concerning law enforcement data collection. I just want to highlight those 2 because those are items that are coming before City Council. There will be discussion on oversight locally with our Bellingham Police Department. And then the concerning law enforcement data collection. This was something that came out of the behavioral health subcommittee quite some time ago, and this is in reference to facial recognition data collection, and that will be coming back up again for discussion. So I just wanted folks to know that the council will be discussing those probably in the Public Health, Safety and Justice Committee. But the list here, the highlighted ones are the ones that are really relevant to the work of this task force. So I just wanted to make sure that the task force had this information. And then if you go all the way down to packet page 12, this looks like it says 2021 legislation. I think this is the county's, and Councilmember Buchanan can probably help me out with this, or Ann Deacon. This looks like the county's priorities going into the next several pages here. But that's just as kind of an outline for folks. 3 through 11 are the city's priorities. And I'll go ahead and stop there.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. As far as the county goes, if I could get a little help from either Dan Ann Deacon or Tyler Schroeder, that would be helpful.
I'm not sure I can help you much with this. I think there's been a lot of different efforts, certainly trying to address the Blake decision. And I heard this morning in my statewide call that Dingra actually voted no against her final bill as it was modified beyond what she was willing to accept. I know there's also significant behavioral health areas of focus, especially given youth mental health and the increase in depression, anxiety that's happened over the last year. And I know that housing is still being addressed actively as well. And like I said, the budgets for both houses are due Wednesday, so we'll see the final outcome there. And then they do intend to finish the entire session by Saturday. I also, just on a different note, last time we met, we voted to send a letter to Ways and Means chairs to encourage operational funding of the Crisis Stabilization Center. And I have not heard yet from Representative Rule that there's any concerns about that. So haven't sent it, and I'm assuming it's still a go.
Thanks, Ann. Tyler, do you have anything to add?
Nope, nothing more to add from Ann. I missed the conversation just a little bit, so I don't know, Councilmember Hamill, if you had a specific question that I could help assist or help find out more information on.
I was just trying to get some clarity on packet page 12, and then the rest of the pages there, that those look like they were county priorities.
This is Jill here. The list beginning on packet page 12 actually came from Raylene. Tyler, you can correct me, but I think the county and the city lists are the same, from the same source.
Yeah, the city, port, and county typically have shared legislative priorities, so they could be very similar. I just didn't know if packet pages 3 through 11 reflected exactly what the county was hoping for at the Olympia level.
So Dan or Tyler, perhaps the House Bill 1092 on law enforcement data, is that only facial recognition, or is that broader and could it affect our work with the index committee and our concern for data in the system?
To clarify, Bellingham City Council will be looking at facial recognition specifically for data collection. This is pursuant to the widespread use of cameras in our downtown core, especially. So we're just looking at facial recognition specifically. So 1092 may cover broader or different types of areas of law, but that's why I just wanted to highlight the council is going to be looking at that one. City Council.
Tyler?
Yeah, and according to that House Bill report for 1092, it's working with the university to establish a program to collect, report, and publish information on law enforcement's use of force or other interactions with incidents involving the public. So it does seem like it's a broader data collection process, not just the facial recognition.
Other questions on the, oh, Raylene, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
That's okay. I just wanted to mention, starting with packet 12 through 18, that's something that we get updates on regularly through the Administration Office of the Courts. It's broken down kind of nicely so you can skim through and look at the laws. They give us the updates on if they're dead, if they're going to proceed, and where they're at. It highlights some of the information that you've already got in the first part of the packet. So it's more information only and broken down to different areas as you guys see fit to review. Thank you.
Thanks, Raylene. Other questions on any of the pending legislation? Okay. Thanks everybody who contributed this information. And I'm going to turn it over to Jack.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks everyone. And I'm getting ready to turn it over to Tyler, who I see his video is on, and this is the topic under the COVID recovery assessment and the report from Tyler. Tyler, it's all yours.
Yeah, great, thanks. Hope everybody's been doing well. Nice to be back to the task force. I've taken a few months off, and so I want to reconnect myself to this important work, and this was a good opportunity for me to do so. I'm not sure, Jill, if I could share my screen. Could you give me access for that?
Sure, one moment. Okay, you should have share screen ability.
Thank you. So I wanted to pull up just a couple of resources. I think in that packet was a link to the NACO's website, which is a really good breakdown of the American Rescue Plan Act and funding. That can be, and in there is a breakdown to the different programs that are associated with it. I got to be a little honest, we're all kind of still looking for details to what the program will actually be as it moves forward. There's been some federal guidance and US Treasury guidance, but it's been very high level at this point. So at this point, we know what the buckets are for the dollars that will be coming into our community. We know what programs have been established for additional funding, either through the federal government or through the state government. And we have an understanding of how long that time frame is going to be. So the American Rescue Act plan, as you guys all know, is a $1.9 trillion package. And in there was 65.1 billion direct federal aid to counties and cities. So if you take a look at the website, this is the NACO site. I felt like it's a very good resource for people to go to. We can send this email out if you want additional information. But in this document, it talks about the different breakdowns for assistance through the American Rescue Act. So the state and local fiscal recovery funds, there's 362 billion nationwide. And in there will be dollars for state fiscal recovery, as well as dollars for local fiscal recovery fund, which is the dollars that will be coming directly to Whatcom County, and as well as the city of Bellingham. So in that, there is a breakdown of funds that will be coming to the county. So for the local funds, $44.46 million will be coming to Whatcom County. That is between 2021 through 2024. And so we do anticipate the first tranche, the first allocation of money from US Treasury to be coming to the county sometime in May of this year. And we are still trying to determine exactly how much we should receive this year. Our understanding is it will be up to half of those dollars. So maybe about $22 million, but we don't know that at this point. So what can those, well, so that's the dollars that are coming to Whatcom County. I think their City of Bellingham representatives on, I believe are getting about $21 million that can be utilized for the same purpose. So the county resource dollars, let's see, let's go here. Sorry for jumping around for a second. The county resource dollars can be used for the county and city resource dollars can be used to respond and mitigate to the public health emergency, to provide government services to the extent in revenue reduction from 19 to 20, to make necessary investments in water and sewer and broadband infrastructure, for state and local governments to provide the nonprofit organizations for transportation or passenger or cargo, which is kind of an odd one to be on. And then also to respond for workers performing essential work to move forward. So the $44 million that are coming into Whatcom County, we will be able to utilize it to respond to county impacts from COVID-19. We've already been working a little bit with the criminal justice system as it relates to some of the court backlogs from the public defender's office, as well as prosecuting attorney's office and the courts. We see that as being one of the top priorities from the county standpoint to move forward. One of the complexities to this at this point is we don't entirely know what the other dollars in that $1.9 trillion stimulus can be used for, because there just hasn't been the guidance. So if I go back to this page, you'll see that I just talked about the state and local fiscal recovery funds. There is another, these are the direct allocations to individuals, but you can see there's assistance to individuals and families, There's $211 billion for education and childcare. There's dollars available for health, which includes behavioral health purposes. Dollars available for transportation, and then a general program. So if you take a look at some of the work that we've done in the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force, there are dollars for development grants and rural health care, certified community behavioral health clinics, expansion grant programs, substance abuse and treatment block grant programs, and mental health programs. So we are still waiting a little bit more information exactly how these dollars can be used before it's kind of determined exactly where the county dollars are prioritized to move forward. I would say that the dollars can be used from 21 through 24. So at this point, the county will be looking at what impacts specifically to county operations there has been as the initial review. So if there has been revenue reduction that we have to accomplish, as well as if there's been operation issues, and I referred to one earlier, just the court backlog and the process associated with it. We will be using those $44 million to help us facilitate and get through that. And then if there are more information about programs that can be funded with some of the other stimulus dollars, we will start to coordinate those dollars out into the community and may be able to use some of the local dollars to enhance programs that have been impacted by COVID to try to set us to a foundation moving forward. So that's about the information that we have at this point. I think I wanted to just provide the resources that NACO is providing. I found that as a good information and a good framework for the information that we have available. There is a link in the packet again to get you to the NACO website, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or if anybody has one.
I see Raylene and Arlene and Tyler and Heather. So Raylene, Arlene and Heather and Tyler, just for clarification before we go on, you alluded to the city of Bellingham having different funds. So when you say that the 44 million is to Whatcom County, are the different incorporated cities included as part of that 44 million, or they have their own separate funding akin to this?
Yeah, so we anticipate in the community for local funds through this to be about $65 to $70 million. So 44 for the county. On top of that is 21 million to the city of Bellingham, and then the small cities also, but they have a smaller portion.
Sure. Okay. So the 44 million is for unincorporated Whatcom County.
Correct.
Okay. So thank you for clarifying that. So Raylene, Arlene, and then Heather.
So I'm hoping Anne can help me out because I don't know all the terminology and this really isn't my area, but I saw the money that was set aside for youth suicide intervention. There's not a CQ unit at the hospital that's separate for juveniles. And I know that's something that's very expensive and that there is a lot of different legal ramifications that has to be looked at. And so I know juvenile issues has been something that, you know, they're going to be adults. There's going to be more mental health issues. We see them in the criminal justice system. Is that money that's set aside something that we could actually look at to set something up for juveniles so that there would be a separate facilities for law enforcement to take them to? Because I don't know that we have anything right now in the county that's separate for juveniles for mental health or intervention.
Yep.
Anne, I think you're unmuted.
How about that now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
The only option we have right now for youth in mental health distress is the hospital locally. And even our region doesn't have an emergency place. In fact, even in terms of inpatient hospitalization, we have very little throughout the state, Children's Hospital being one of the biggest we have. And even then it's quite a wait list. So we do know that federal block grant funds for mental health are coming to the region's ASO as well as the MCOs. And we've been in meetings with them to plan on how we can best use those funds. It's not a lot of money by the time it gets down to our region. But I also think the other thing we look at is, do we have the demand that would justify building a very, very expensive facility? And then of course, operations would be incredibly expensive. So that's pretty callous when we are watching our children suffer. But obviously that's, you know, you need an operator to step forward. You need somebody to invest in the building. You need somebody willing to operate the facility, and they're not going to do so if they don't have the funds. So it's a large conversation on a regional level right now, as well as a state level, on just how we're going to address it. But there are no specific efforts right now underway other than increasing crisis outreach services and crisis lines for kids. Obviously, we're putting more into our school districts right now, just in terms of both local funds as well as some of the other grants we have, working with them to reach out to those families and kids who seem to be in great distress.
Thank you, Ann. Was there anything else, really?
I appreciate your comments. I do think there's somewhat of a demand, but I don't think if you have anything out there, then the parents are at a loss. I also concerned with COVID that there's so many kids that are not going to schools, things are remote. So how successful are the schools at reaching out to the kids that aren't there, that have limited internet? So I think it's a problem, and we see them growing into adults and ending up in the criminal justice system. So I think it's something that we as a whole need to look at to try to support our youth in getting healthy. Thank you.
I don't think there's any argument against that. I think the issue is making it happen. It costs money that we don't typically put into that. And now we've got 5 commercial health plans that need to decide, do they want to pay for something that's, you know, maybe operate at a loss. You know, it's just a horrible comment on our mental health system. I will say, in terms of our school programs, the people that our dollars reach out to are those people that aren't reached in any other way, broadband or not. I mean, that's who we target, are the most vulnerable.
Thank you, Ann.
Okay, Arlene.
I think what you're what you're talking about is related to my question too, which is the categories talked about here are so general that it falls back on the community to make a specific plan as a way to use these funds. It's really important, I think, for this organization to get together and make some suggestions and recommendations for the use of this money. This is a lot of money. And who, for example, you said the county, who is making the decisions about where this money goes? What people, what committee, please?
Yeah, so I'll give a little bit of background. So for the CARES Act dollars, which was a similar federal funding that only lasted 10 months. So we were kind of building the airplane while also trying to distribute the funds at the same time. There was a lot of coordination between the city of Bellingham and Whatcom County and the small cities, and working directly with health department leadership as it relates to where those dollars were to go. Frameworks and plans and programs were developed and then discussed at the council level. And the council then established budgets that were then implemented to get out about $26 million last year through the CARES Act program. Now, a lot of that also was to facilitate the health department response specifically to COVID, which was about $10 million of that. So I would anticipate a similar process, and we are still trying to determine exactly how task force and different community groups can provide input on where the dollars are going to go. I think it's important to know that this program is through 2024. So I would recognize that there is emergent needs that we all know of, but there is also time to do this process appropriately and accurately. And we don't need to rush into spending the dollars just within the 10 months like we had with the CARES Act. So there will be more information provided to the community about how the funding decisions will be made. We're still trying to develop that at this point, Arlene.
Okay, so you're not really answering my question.
Arlene, maybe I can help you to some extent, and I'll only speak for Health and Human Services, but we have a number of citizen advisory committees, and when we have new pots of money coming in, we always work with advisory committees on priorities and identifying needs, even if that means a new community needs assessment. So that's how we reach the community's input. And sometimes we even go out for presentations, which we've done before too, in terms of strategic planning.
Okay, so the advisory committees, various advisory committees, does this have a name? Does this have a meeting time? Does this?
Sure. So we have a public health advisory board that meets early Thursday mornings, and I can't quote the dates right now, but it's on the website. There's a Whatcom County Housing Advisory Committee. It's also on the website that's set by interlocal agreement among the county and all 7 cities. We have a Behavioral Health Advisory Committee that meets on a regular basis. That's also on our website. For vulnerable populations, we also have not only a Veterans Advisory Committee, but also a Developmental Disabilities Advisory Committee. And then we work very closely with the regional organizations in an interlocal leadership structure where all 5 of the managed care organizations, the ASO, and all 5 of the counties meet to do these plans. And then we also have a statewide committee, the Association of County Human Services, that meets on a regular basis. So that's in my world. I know there's other advisory committees in other places, but that's how we do our work, is working with all those different organizations.
So they advise the health department and the counties.
Yes.
And then the decision gets made by the health department and the counties.
Well, go ahead.
The numbers.
Yeah, so overall, it'll be a county council budgeting decision. So the county council will be making decisions about how
county council
the $44 million.
Okay.
Yeah, so to clarify for everyone, oh, go ahead, Barry. Yeah.
I was just going to say, yeah, we'll get recommendations that'll come in from these advisory committees and from the administration, and then the council will weigh those options and make decisions.
So what do you think about the idea of the IPRTF making some recommendations for the use of funds? I mean, since we have things to accomplish here, and those things require expansion of care and reentry expansion and preventive expansion. So what's your response to that?
Well, I think that, the task force was created to be an advisory body to the county council. So in that role, it would certainly be appropriate. We just got to always make sure that we're within the mandates of our work. And I think we are in this case. So, we need to form those opinions, form those recommendations carefully. And yes, Arlene, I agree that, chairs, you can correct me if you think it's not appropriate, but I see it as appropriate, making recommendations.
Well, I thought that was why I was on the agenda, IPRTF funding recommendations. So I really believe, but this is just for benefit of everyone, this is just an introduction to this. And as Tyler points out, we have through 2024, we're barely in 2021. So I think what's likely going to happen is the steering committee, which you're part of, Arlene, will discuss how will we do some funding recommendations. I suspect we'll ask the subcommittees what they see within their work that makes sense. I'm sure behavioral health will have some suggestions, and crisis stabilization will. And ultimately, probably there'll be a process to come back to the task force with some recommendations. And we need to make sure we get those in prior to any deadlines that the council has. And usually in these matters, it's better to be in there early rather than later. So in other words, if we know within a few months, putting the radar on what we want makes sense. But I think that the next step, now that we know the availability, is for the steering committee. But the other thing too that Tyler mentioned, I think we also don't know the extent of the funds, because given the other infrastructure, $2 trillion, there could be areas we may have more or competing or silos that we're not quite aware of yet that could help inform what's a smart decision. Did I capture that correctly, Tyler? That seemed to be what you were saying. That's, I think, probably the next step, if you agree, Stephen, is we take this to steering and probably ask the subcommittees to identify and highlight those things that these funds might be used for, consistent with the objectives of this task force, and get that on our radar. Does that help, Arlene? Okay. Because I'd like to see some money to the Crisis Stabilization Center. I mean, we all have the things that we're passionate about, that we care about, and I think it's important we articulate and communicate that. Heather.
Thank you, Tyler, for sharing this information with us this morning. Heather Flaherty, Citizen Advisor. And Arlene, I really just want to underline the importance of the question you just asked about who is making the decisions. And I would really strongly recommend to the county to talk to citizens and regular people who aren't even on committees. I think it's a great opportunity to get perspective from community members on needs and ideas, and to not just inadvertently allow the system to churn as the system typically does. And as more information comes out, I think that will be really exciting. It's such a huge opportunity. Sometimes I worry about like $20 million or $40 million can go pretty fast, right? And everybody already has their list in their head of all the things that would be great to spend those dollars on. So I don't envy the county's position at all in that regard, because you have a lot of ideas coming your way, I'm sure. But if there are opportunities for citizen involvement, I really encourage that. And then the third thing I wanted to say is that Councilmember Carol Frazee and Councilmember Rudd Brown introduced a resolution last week or a couple weeks ago, recommending that County Council earmark the majority of these dollars to go towards childcare, to making sure childcare is sustainable and affordable in perpetuity. And the resolution included some information about helping childcare facilities, and it was a facility-focused resolution. My understanding is the next step from that was Carol and Rudd were going to get together some people involved in childcare to better inform that. So that's exciting. And I don't know, Tyler, if you want to share any more about that, but I thought this committee would be interested in knowing that there's already recommendations out there coming about where these dollars can go. Barry, sorry, I'm not calling on people, but I saw you raise your hand.
Well, I was just going to respond to your question. I was going to answer that there is an effort going on right now to get community members together to discuss what you just said. So yeah, I was just agreeing with you, and I don't know exactly where that's at. It's only been a couple of weeks, so we'll check in tomorrow when we have our meeting and see how we're progressing.
Anyone else or any other questions? Stephen. You were mute there.
Sorry. I just wanted to try to capture what we've said here and specifically ask Barry, Dan, Tyler, to keep the task force in the loop as some of these conversations start to develop. especially the ground level kinds of conversations that Arlene and Heather have encouraged, because I do think that community-based conversations beyond the scope of already appointed advisory committees would be a useful thing. And I'd like to endorse Jack's suggestion that the steering committee ASAP look at processes and focuses for recommendations coming out of the task force. I think we should be a strong and not a disproportionate, but certainly an equal voice in making recommendations for the expenditure of some of these funds.
Thank you, Stephen. I agree. I think the task force needs to do that. The one cautionary note I would is Tyler was showing the things. I immediately went to things outside of this task force, like spending money on sewers for affordable housing because of other interests I have, which I'll pursue elsewhere. But I think we need to be aware that when we're wearing our hats in this task force, that the advocacy we're working on is those things consistent with the task force. So, because it's very easy to, to say, well, it's sort of related, but I think we will be most effective if we come up with the things that are most aligned with reducing incarceration, that are strong and compelling. One of the things Ann did so brilliantly with the 1/10 funds is we set up a standard, like when there was matching money, we went for those. In other words, we always tried to pick the things that obviously made the most sense, that had the most impact, because there's never a lack of great ideas and ways to spend the money. So just my thought on that. Raylene?
Thank you, Jack. My question is for Tyler. I think it would be easier for the committee chairs to be able to go back to our committees and say, okay, this is the money that we think would be able to be used by the Legal and Justice Committee so that we could endorse certain programs that we think that would be beneficial. If you could possibly break down what monies are specific to each area that would be available, that we could come back to the task force as a whole. I'm sure we could kind of figure it out, but it would be helpful if you could break that down for us and give us some guidance, Tyler.
Yeah, so really the only guidance we have to date, and I got to be clear, like the links and the information I've provided the task force is the amount of information that we have to date. I don't have any other secret information on where it's at. There just hasn't yet been guidance from the U.S. Treasury, unfortunately. But there's the $44 million to Whatcom County for local government responses. And then there's $21 million to the city of Bellingham. So an example of some, and so when I have that information, Raylene, I will be happy to provide it. But I think at this point, it's kind of brainstorming, like the task force was just talking about, is which programs would fit those, which local programs in our community that you guys all work on fit those larger programs in the American Rescue Plan Act. And then as we start to frame out those priorities in our community, we can then start to frame how much money could be allocated to each program. It needs to be informed with the other programs that are coming through this state, because an example that Heather brought up earlier was the childcare. Very important locally to focus on childcare. And there are not only the money from the $44 million for Whatcom County, there's about $233 million coming through the state specifically for child care enhancement and improvement. So we need to understand where those state dollars are coming through before we can make some decisions about the local dollars, so that we're not duplicating effort. So right now, unfortunately, the only number I have to give you is that the local government dollars is $44 million in total from 21 to 24. The links I gave were a framework of the programs that we know of. So I think the steering committee would be well suited to take a look at those and get some information associated with it. And then as soon as we have more information and a better understanding of how much dollars, I will provide it to you. I'm not trying to not answer the questions. I'm just trying to provide you the amount of information I have available to me at this time.
Arlene?
I just wanted to mention that I saw that President Biden has it on his list of things to do to provide nationwide pre-kindergarten. Nationwide. I mean, it's incredible to see. So that's probably going to address a lot of what we're talking about, but that's in the future, of course. He's got his list of priorities and he's not there yet. But when I saw it, I just went, oh my, at last.
Dan?
Thanks. So a couple of things. One is that different bodies of like this one and councils and other advisory bodies to those councils will need to come into some alignment. And this is in reference directly to what Ms. Feld just said regarding universal pre-K. So that's something that myself and Ms. Flaherty and others have been working on, or working towards rather, for quite some time now. And if we're able to get some relief at the federal level, that would answer a lot of questions for us. So there's that piece. So just acknowledging we've got some alignment work to do. That's going to be very important, so we can be very, so we can address the issues directly. And then my question is for Mr. Schroeder, in terms of, I'm trying to just kind of understand how the money can be spent. So if we have existing issues, can we then develop new programs to address those issues with this funding? That's the question.
I believe so. Yep.
Okay, was there any other questions on this topic? Thanks everyone. Tyler, that was a welcome presentation. They normally aren't. I mean, I love the fact that we're imagining how we might use resources. That's a very wonderful topic. Please keep coming back with those. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's quite different than what I would have been presenting in April of last year.
Yeah, well,
it feels very hopeful for the conversation and the discussion.
Yeah, you're not like George Clooney laying everybody off in that movie. You're coming with large S. So moving on, Anne, crisis stabilization, any kind of update you'd like to give us or just where things are at that would be useful for the committee to be aware of?
Sure. So we have a program advisory committee that meets on a monthly basis that helps guide really the practices of referral, admission, discharge, et cetera, to make sure that this new program turns out the way we intend it to. And of course, every time you open a brand new huge program, it can go anywhere if you don't purposefully continue to keep an eye on it and make sure that you nurture it along. Right now, all 16 beds at the substance withdrawal management treatment unit have been open, and at times they've been full. Last I heard, they were up to 10 beds open on the mental health stabilization side. And part of that was due to staffing, and part of it has just to do with all the 1,000 details of buildings that are newly built and things that work or don't work, or sometimes work. So that's kind of a constant effort. I think I shared last time, but one of the fun things is that we have a group of community artists that Holly Huffman, council member from the city of Bellingham, helped organize that are going to be painting murals on the wall throughout the facility. So kind of a great community project. And we typically don't like to hang pictures in buildings like this. People under stress don't need extra things to get in the way. So we're working very closely with some artists on how to make the place a little bit homier. And then we also are working a lot on two major program issues. One is trying to get EMS to transport directly to this as an alternative destination. Right now, ambulances typically can only take people to the hospital. And that's pretty consistent statewide. So while the community paramedics who aren't necessarily just responding to an emergency in an ambulance, but are truly doing a lot of the prevention work. They are bringing people directly to this facility now, but we are working with the state and local medical director and the hospital on whether or not we think we can get ambulances to directly transport here. So that's quite a lot of work, but the good news is they could be reimbursed by doing so if we figure out how to make that happen. And then we're obviously working with the mental health side of the house on certifying that as a triage facility within voluntary placement, which of course we've talked about a lot. And the managed care organizations have been starting to step forward to actually pay the costs of operating that facility as an involuntary facility. We worked really closely with the healthcare authority, all 5 MCOs and the regional ASO to really put some pressure on the MCOs to pay for these services to cover costs. What we found in all of our work that the state had, I don't know if it was just an oversight or what, but they did not count these new beds in their formula, in their actuarial formulation that helps determine how much money each MCO gets. So once we discovered that, the healthcare authority has gone back, recalculated that, and changed the per member per month rate to reflect those beds, which then made it not only easier for the MCOs to justify payment, but also more difficult for them not to provide accurate and full operating costs. So I feel like this has been a slog. I think I've used that term before. It's a lot of tedious work, little baby steps forward to get operational funding of this facility to where it should be. And it looks like we're still moving in that direction and still making positive steps forward. And once we are fully operational, all 16 beds at the mental health stabilization site, we will certainly let everyone know. And then of course we will still continue to work on the involuntary status. They have had a number of police drop-offs already, regardless of voluntary or involuntary status. And part of the effort too is just making sure that we find a way to educate all law enforcement agencies on who is appropriate for placement there. So we've had a few people brought in by law enforcement that just weren't appropriate. They were physically assaulted and probably just not the best place for them at that time. But again, those are things that happen when you first open a new program and they're being worked out. So I feel like we're moving forward. It's just, I like it to happen overnight. It didn't.
And congratulations on what you've accomplished. I just think it's pretty stunning. And I suppose maybe later on you can write a book about overcoming obstacles in bureaucracy and funding. so that the rest of the world can know how to do it. Because,
I don't think I'm a master in that yet.
But you're learning a lot, that's for sure. Every time you get over one of those bumps and then you put it behind you. I mean, it's amazing because that inertia is very difficult to deal with.
Raylene and Dan.
And are we tracking the individuals that weren't a good fit? What happens to them if they end up back at the hospital, if they end up in jail for being assaultive, and how many end up that way so that we can kind of see where we need to put those individuals at a later time?
We are having those discussions and we are collecting data now. I have to find out from my staff to what level of detail. And I also think that sometimes it isn't I mean, it's business as usual. If they can't come to the Crisis Stabilization Center, then there's only two other options if in fact they can't be just left wherever they are. So either they go to jail or they go to the hospital. But we don't have it. I don't mean to be cavalier here. We're collecting a lot of information, a lot of qualitative information right now, but I don't know that I have any report to offer at this point. I just think we're too early in that because we're still trying to get the right people referred and admitted.
Yeah.
I guess, and thanks, Ms. King, for raising that question. That's an excellent question. My question, I have two questions. One is for law enforcement on the call. So I see two police chiefs on the call here. How are law enforcement line officers being educated on the value of this facility as an alternative place to take people versus jail or the hospital? So how does that work? Because my understanding was previously the older facility was not utilized as much because I think there were some perception issues or perhaps reality issues of usage. So I'm just trying to understand how our first responders are educated on the use of this facility. And then my second question is, this is a regional facility. So to what extent are other counties utilizing this facility? And that's probably a question for Ms. Deacon. So first question is how's law enforcement educated?
I'll take that first one, Dan. Our officers are trained. They have built-in training days. And so the supervisors learn about the process and who meets the criteria. And then they're trained in the groups that they work with. I don't know how they do it in Blaine, but Tank will tell you.
Yeah, so, it's very similar to that. And I can tell you that there is a learning curve. Every couple of months, there's a new program or, other opportunities. So our struggle is just to make sure that all the officers know what the opportunities are and the resources. So like Chief Simon said, we definitely train on that, but certainly we're trying to do better and to really get the word out to the officers, the resources that we have available. So it's a work in progress.
I will say that we have not initiated formal training yet, simply because we're still waiting for the final certification as an involuntary facility. And our concern was that we didn't want to add confusion right now until we did that. But we do have law enforcement on the program advisory committee. We have representation from leadership at both the sheriff's office and the city of Bellingham right now. And the hope for us is once we get that certification for involuntary, we get the protocols and procedures in place, then we do heavy duty training. And we would probably want to meet with each roll call muster of each jurisdiction to help, because it will be a brand new program. And there's just no way people could learn it without folks being very specific, that we've got to have some written protocols that are very brief. And it will be a huge effort, but we haven't started because it's still a voluntary facility and we didn't want to go out and train and then go back out and say, never mind, forget everything we told you. So it's been a quiet opening. Sorry.
And I would also say, one idea that I just might throw out there is that for that training, if perhaps a short video could be put together so that way it's easily disseminated at different shifts and just makes it easier for the officers. So thank you.
We heard that and we will do that. Great idea.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thanks, Jack. And I'm just trying to understand, when did we find out about this ambulance glitch, and where is the locus of that problem? Is it with the healthcare authority or the MCOs, or
It's not a glitch. It's business as usual. It's the way they've always done it and still do it. Ambulances always take to a hospital. And in order for them to go to an alternative destination, then a whole series of protocols need to be developed, approved by everybody on up the line. I think our EMS manager, who's not with us today, can probably give you a lot more details about that, but it's really very unusual in our state, maybe in the nation, to be honest with you. I don't think I know the scope of this, for ambulances to take somebody anywhere but the hospital. So we are attempting to do something pretty unusual, and we may or may not be successful. But certainly transport vehicles, medical vehicles can take folks here now, as well as community paramedics do drop people off now.
Thank you.
And Dan asked another question, and I don't remember what it was that I was supposed to answer.
It was regarding the, this is a regional facility.
Oh.
So I'm just trying to get a sense of like, what is the makeup, the composition of patients there?
Well, we track that information, and I don't have it today. So sorry. I do think there's probably a few that are brought our way when beds are full elsewhere, but it's not a huge amount. But I will get those numbers.
And just a quick follow-up, what is the other closest facility that is similar to our crisis stabilization facility in the region?
Skagit County has one, although I understand it's closing. Island County is going to open one in June. And then, of course, there's one in Everett, Snohomish County.
Any other questions? And I've got two, and you can delay the answers, but eventually it would be good to know when the mental health side will be at full capacity. I don't need that today, but I know we're all interested, probably no one more than you, at having all those beds in service. And the second is, although I understand we're kind of still in that opening stage and our data as such can't be deemed what we're likely to see in the future, it will be good when we can finally get some data points about, like the point Raylene said about who's turned away, what our demographics are, how often we're full. I think as relates to the task force, knowing that law enforcement and others can do the drop-offs is data that we're really interested in. And I highlight this only so when you're in meetings with your staff talking about it, I think those are some of the data points we're interested in, and it'll be good when we are at a place where we can get a report on that and kind of see the impact it's having.
So we did put in our, so we kind of threw a crowbar, if you will, into the mess of our lease agreement, in that we're just leasing the building, we're not paying for services. But what's really unusual is that in the lease, we had an attached memorandum of understanding that required them to report on a lot of that information that you just asked about on a monthly basis. So we will get that, but I don't know if we asked what happened to people who were denied admission. So we may add that to the set of criteria, but I also haven't followed the data too closely right now, simply because it wasn't illustrative of, you know, the program as it's going to be. So it's useful for our advisory committee discussion. It's in terms of where are the pressure points, where do we need to make some, you know, solutions and program changes, but it's not fit for the public yet.
No, and you've only been open roughly 90 days, and I imagine your ongoing efforts need to be spent fine tuning just to get things up and running before you track what you're doing. I think most of us appreciate that, but it will be good when some of that data is available. Thank you. Anything else on the Crisis Stabilization Center? All right, well, that was two nice topics in a row: potential funds, Crisis Stabilization Center up and running. And Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can start with committees.
Hey, let's start. Very good, thank you. Can you report on the steering committee, please?
Sure can. Thanks, Stephen. The steering committee met on April 8th, and we had a real busy agenda. Not only did we talk about the things that were presented today, we've started really scheming and brainstorming on what some future agenda items could be. And I'll just go through them briefly. One that's going to be coming up here soon in May will be an update on the Behavioral Health Crisis Response Program, which is the kind of the alternative 911 program that's being worked on, how we get behavioral health folks on the scene. That'll be coming at our May 17th task force meeting, and it'll also be at the joint meeting of the legal and the justice systems and the behavioral health committees in May. Other topics are inpatient pregnant and parenting, a women's treatment program, and that has been or will be presented at the behavioral health committee meeting. We're talking about reentry, especially around the Blake decision and COVID, and how we're, that amplifies some of the needs that we need to be looking at reentry. We're really, now that we've got the Crisis Stabilization Center up and running, and that was such a hot priority for us, we're really wanting to look at some of these overarching strategic plan items and the focus of the task force, and start, just freshening that up and looking at what that strategic plan may look like. One of those points is revisiting the Vera report on elimination of the low-level bail. That's something that the steering committee really feels is important to be looking at, because there were some recommendations put out by Vera, and we kind of need to get back to that. We're going to look at funding for the pretrial services unit, including adding additional staff to ramp up some of those risk assessment tasks and monitoring that we feel is important. And of course, one that was just mentioned here today was the American Rescue Plan, and how the steering committee needs to chew on that a little bit and come up with some recommendations. Another big topic was communication strategy. What I had reported out is that the council has a resolution in place that came kind of from the Planning Commission as far as putting together a communications kind of strategy team. Myself, county executive, Councilmember Donovan's on it, a member of the Planning Commission's on it, and it's geared around looking at how all of our advisory boards and commissions communicate with the public, which would include us. We're looking at a lot of different efforts that are taking place. They've hired someone to do communications for the GRACE program, for instance, and for the LEAD program. What the thought is to create what they call a roster. People, an RFQ or a request for qualifications goes out, and the responses come back in, and we build a list of qualified operators for that kind of communication strategy. And then as we have needs, we can engage those firms from that list of that roster. Annual report to the county council and executive, that'll be coming up here early in the summer. I think all the committees have been kind of given instructions on that. If not, that will be forthcoming very soon through your committees. And that's really kind of my notes on the steering committee. I don't know if anybody else that's on would like to add to what I mentioned, or questions.
Comments or questions for Barry? Okay, thanks very much, Barry. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Dan and Mike, if you're still on, can you report on the Behavioral Health Committee, please?
I can get us started. I just texted Mike Parker to see if he wanted to provide the committee report since he ran the meeting last time, but I think he might have childcare duty right now. So I'll just go ahead and get us started. This was from the March 16th Behavioral Health Subcommittee meeting. We had a number of different items that we discussed. One of them was a potential treatment option for pregnant and parenting women. This is a measure that's been being brought forward by Byron Mannering, who's the executive director of Bridget Collins, and he has enlisted Mike Parker and myself and others to kind of help the effort to see if this was a viable program for our community, and potentially it could be a multi-county facility in terms of Skagit, Whatcom. And this is, I asked Mr. Schroeder at the beginning of the call whether or not existing issues could be addressed with new programs, and this is what I had in mind when I was asking that question. I think it's very important that we look at this. One other item we talked about was the GARE toolkit. That's the Government Alliance on Race and Equity that Mike Parker has been promoting and putting forward, and that's been adopted by this group as well. And then Ms. Flaherty reported on her work on the Racial Equity Commission Development Group that I serve on with her, and as well as Mayor Fleetwood, I believe, is on the call today, Executive Sidhu, Council members Buchanan and Huffman and others have been invited to serve on that development committee. And Ms. Flaherty reported on the progress on that. It looks like we're going to have perhaps a seated stakeholder group by June, is what I'm understanding. So that's great progress. This has been a very deliberative effort. And so I think it's important for this body to understand that commission will probably work, probably frequently with the work of this task force. So it's important to understand that. We also discussed committee priorities. We talked about the Blake decision. I think that seems to be the thing that people are really trying to figure out right now. So we discussed that at length. We talked about upstream prevention and diversion, such as a children's initiative, which Ms. Flaherty is also working on. She seems to have her fingerprints on a lot of really important work that's going on in the community. We discussed House Bill 1590 and House Bill 1406. Those are 1590 was adopted at the city and county council level. That provides for a cumulative total of $5 million for housing and mental health and related behavioral health services, which is basically like taking the Bellingham Home Fund and doubling it, essentially. So that's really good news for working towards structural changes in housing and related services. We did talk about working with other committees like Index and how we can be helpful in trying to provide data to that committee, and just what the nexus with that committee is. Just looking through the notes here. We discussed state legislation and some of the items that are in your packet here today, including the 20 plus bills that the city is monitoring. And we talked about identifying connector points in the system to provide and facilitate for a stronger warm handoff process for folks that are in the system currently. And I think that covers it. I don't know if Mike is on the line here, if he has any opinions on anything that I missed, or if any other committee members who are associated with that subcommittee have any other items to add, or if there are any questions, I'll take them at this time.
Doesn't look like any questions. Thank you very much, Dan. That was a lot of business conducted there. Arlene and Raylene, would you please report on Legal and Justice Systems Committee?
Thank you, Stephen. Our focus really was on what the Legal and Justice Committee is going to be using for the annual report, reaching out to committee members to assist us in trying to get a draft ready for Jill by the end of this month. Arlene and I will be meeting on Wednesday this afternoon to try to put something together for her. We talked about the pretrial services division. Stephen Gockley, I think you were going to assist with Dave Freeman, possibly Judge Garrett, to try to get us a report on where that is for the summary. The lead program, we're reaching out to Eric Ritchie. I talked to Darlene. I got to talk to Bruce a little bit more on some of the programs that we have going. We wanted to include some of the education that we've had at our committee meetings. And then we did talk about the joint meeting, the 911 alternative program, on what legal and justice we're looking at, concerns and thoughts, and things that we need to bring to the next behavioral health, legal and justice joint meeting. We also did talk about next steps, re-entry, domestic violence offender treatment programs, things that we need to look at. We also need to see if Anne will help us out with information on the recovery house for drug court. And I think, hopefully I'm not missing too much. We do want to talk about re-entry, where we're at, where we were. Some of the stuff that we've done years ago is things that we may want to revisit due to COVID. Arlene, anything else that I think we're missing?
No, you covered the waterfront, that's for sure, with a lot. But I think that, you know, to look ahead at reentry and domestic violence services, those were two things that we're going to try and bring us up to date about what's available and what we need to get.
Any questions? Dan?
Yeah, so those two topics are near and dear to my heart. I serve on DV-SAS's board, and so my question is, what are you looking at for domestic violence service gap service provision? And then on the reentry piece, I was just discussing with a council member yesterday, just the dearth of those services here and the need for them. So I'm just curious as to those two topics, just where you all are at in landing on that.
So on the DV, there was some money that was allocated. Things kind of fell through. We were hoping for new programs. There was some major cuts to that funding for the DV. And I know that Darlene really worked on that with Bruce on trying to at least keep some of that program alive. Unfortunately, we still only have 2 providers in Whatcom County. So kind of looking at what can we do to maybe get more providers out there and make sure that those that need treatment have the ability to get the treatment and the funding. I think that kind of got cut, and maybe that's something that we can look at with the funding that Tyler was talking about. Maybe there's some areas that we can, because it definitely got cut due to COVID, and we really need to work on that. The reentry is, there was a lot of programs that we got educated years back on, but now we've got possibly more people getting released. We're not sure what programs are even working yet. So we kind of got to delve in and find out what is out there, what's not out there, and what we need, and to make sure that facilities are there for behavioral health as well as just in general, because people might not have housing, might not have funding to get started once they're released. Anne?
I think it's really important, and I should have mentioned it earlier perhaps, but this committee or task force should really be aware of the workforce challenges we're having, not just in this county, but in others up and down the I-5 corridor. We have one behavioral health treatment agency, for instance, that has over 100 vacancies in terms of behavioral health providers. So when we're talking about reentry, we had a robust program. We were able to fund it up to a full-time position from a half-time position, but trying to hire somebody to do that work is where the problem lies. So I just want us all to be aware. We're certainly working with our regional partners on this, the MCOs, and of course the State Healthcare Authority. And there's been some work in the legislature about this, not enough, but it's a huge, huge issue for us at a time when people are desperately in need of these services. So that's the sad thing. In terms of the domestic violence perpetrator treatment, there's still quite a bit. I think there's still, I don't think I can quote, I believe we're at least 50,000 a year available for funding, but I also think it is very hard to recruit those providers in the sense that the treatment protocols set by the state, first of all, are barely meeting the needs to be effective in my clinical opinion, and I speak as a licensed clinician, but I also think it's very hard for providers to make a living at it if that's the only work they do. So I think one of the things that we might need to consider as a task force is looking at agencies that have a number of different treatment offerings and maybe bring this in as another component of something they offer. But a standalone provider, I don't know how they can make a living doing this work, given the way the state has set up the requirements.
The work of counseling perpetrators is very difficult and complex and needs special training. And so it means if you're going to entice people to come and do that work and maybe move from a more populous area where they've gotten their training and live, we have to offer them more in salaries in order to get them to do those moves. But that particular task is really very difficult, but also there's very few. There's not very many people who are specialists.
Do you think that it's the wages aren't high enough, or is it a combination that we don't not have enough trained personnel, that it's not being promoted as something to be educated in to get people out there for that? Is it both? What is it that we need?
The requirements of the state in terms of what constitutes a certifiable program is that they have to meet with the clients at least once a week in a setting, plus some follow-up. The amount required in terms of treatment, you would need a large clientele in order to make a living at this. So it's not wages, because at least in our county, we have basically 2 providers that are self-employed. So it's not wages, it's what you can get reimbursed for. And you would need a lot more clients who actually pay for their services in order for them to not only make a living, but make it more appealing to people who might want to get into the business. First of all, it's a high risk program in that you're working with people that are at high risk for harm. And then you've got an intensity in a program that is expensive for treatment recipients, and not all of them can pay that. And even if we were to pay for all of it, you still need enough clients so that the providers can bill enough to make a living. There's just so many issues with this program right now, and it can't be solved just locally. This is a statewide issue that really needs to have some serious consideration.
I mean, I think that the Northwest as an entity probably has enough people committing domestic violence against their partners to fill a couple of therapy groups at the very least. But the question is, who's involved, engaged in a program, and who has been directed to get this kind of treatment? It's not something that people are doing voluntarily. It usually happens through coercion, right? Because they've gotten to court, and the court or the workers have recommended intensive treatment as the answer. So, and then the treatment itself is would be individual and group therapy. It's pretty, it's pretty layered.
One other thing to consider in all of this, when we're talking about how you might build a program like this, insurance, commercial insurance and Medicaid typically do not cover these treatment services. It's not an eligible expense. Mm-hmm. And so then you rely on private pay. And when you're talking about intensive treatment, which is required to truly make a difference in somebody's patterns of thinking and behavior, that's a very costly endeavor. And a lot of people don't have the funds to cover it. And the counties and local governments, only have so much to give. So that's what I'm saying. This is a multifaceted challenge, both in terms of the treatment regimen as well as the way to reimburse for services. It's just huge.
So, I mean, we understand what are the obstacles. The question would be more, how can we make it happen? And so that's what we need ideas for and help with. It is to how to fill. This is one of our gaps in our social service system, and it is important, but the question is how to cover this gap.
I thank you so much for the information. And I think this is definitely a topic for one of our next Legal and Justice Committee meetings. I don't want to get too far the weeds at this meeting, but I think this information is extremely important. It is something that we've talked about. I think there's a lot of different avenues that we need to look at. I think Mike Parker might be somebody we want to also engage in on this, because housing is definitely an issue if convicted of a domestic violence. And then if you've had treatment and there's not funding, I mean, just from the court's perspective, we see so many people that are convicted or that are ordered to have treatment, and there's only 2 treatment providers for all of the courts in the county. And that's just not enough, because they don't have the funding to go to the treatment that's mandated. And then there's more issues, and we want people to get help, not to have a revolving issue. So I saw Dan's hand up, and I am not the chair on this, so I'm gonna let everybody else take over from here.
Well, I agree that so my request is that we bring this up at our joint meeting to drill into this topic a little bit, because it has behavioral health components as well. And this is a matter of life and death for some people, literally, and at its worst. And somewhere in the middle, people are being assaulted, people are being traumatized. And you're right, Ms. King, that there's a housing component. It's very complex. Ms. Deacon brought up all the layers of complexity. When DVSAS failed to deliver on this item 3 years ago, this is one of the main reasons I joined their board, was to try to get some traction on this. That was a tactical error, in my opinion. So we cannot fail our community on this. And I think that we're going to be at least one of the bodies that is providing some level of influence on how this can proceed forward. So I'm requesting that we bring this up so we can drill into this a little bit more and get some greater level of detail that probably doesn't need to be discussed here, but could be discussed within that committee structure.
Are there other questions for Raylene and Arlene on Legal and Justice Committee work? Seeing none, I'll turn it back to Jack. You want to take us out on the agenda, Jack?
Sure. I'm not aware of any other businesses or anything else that needs to be addressed before the task force today from any of the task force members. Jill, would you like to do a reminder about annual report stuff? Would this be a good time for that?
Sure. What would you like to be reminded of?
Well, I know you've been putting out the time on. I guess I really just want to remind the subcommittee chairs that you need information, I think by the end of April. Is that correct? Initial drafts?
First drafts, yes.
Okay. So I know we all probably work best with deadlines. So that's 10 business days coming soon, the deadline for the initial drafts for the annual report. Okay. I'm not aware of any other business, and I've seen none from anyone else. I would like to actually turn this again over to you, Jill, to facilitate the public comment, because you do that so adeptly.
Thank you. If any of the attendees to today's meeting would like to speak to the task force, you can virtually raise your hand now. No hands are raised.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for being here. We will conclude this meeting a little bit early, 10:42. And thanks. Have a great week. And it's good to see all of you. Thanks.